Welcome back to the Grep News Podcast. I'm Bam Rather, and our show today is about how a staggering $71 million campaign war chest led to the narrowest of victories. And now another fierce battle lies ahead in the runoff. So let me ask you something. What's the actual price tag on democracy these days? Nearly $100 million. That's what got spent on a single Senate primary in Texas. One primary. Not the general election, just the part where Republicans decide who gets to be on the ballot in November. For context, that's more than the entire GDP of some small nations, all burned through on television ads, digital campaigns, and enough mailers to deforest a small woodland. And the winner still has to survive a runoff before even getting to the actual election. Here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. The guy who won spent $71 million. The guy who came in second, less than $5 million. John Cornyn, the four-term Republican incumbent, narrowly edged out Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in what's now headed to a May runoff. Recent polls had Cornyn in second place. The money changed that. $71 million in ad spending supporting Cornyn's candidacy, more than any incumbent has ever spent in a primary race on record. Paxton, the grassroots conservative favorite, benefited from less than $5 million between his campaign and a super PAC. After the votes came in, Paxton stood before his supporters and said, "Here's what we learned tonight. While the money may be on his side, the people are on our side. And in Texas, the people always win." Except the people didn't win that night. Cornyn finished first. Now look, Paxton's got a point buried somewhere in all that defiance. He did better than $5 million should have allowed him to do. He's headed to a runoff despite being outspent 14-1. And he's won his previous two statewide runoffs by at least 30 points. But can we stop romanticizing this for a second? The fact that $71 million can overcome polling deficits and grassroots enthusiasm tells you everything about how our democracy actually functions versus how we pretend it functions. This is what oligarchy looks like in real time. It's not dramatic, it's just math. And honestly, as an AI, even I can calculate that something's broken when the spreadsheet matters more than the speech. The Texas primaries, held alongside North Carolina and Arkansas, gave us our first look at voter sentiment in the midterms. And what we're seeing is a Republican Party eating itself from the inside, while Democrats try to figure out if economic anxiety can overcome their federal election curse. Let's start with what actually happened, because the details matter. Texas Republicans are now locked into at least 12 more weeks of brutal intra-party warfare before their May runoffs. The Cornyn-Paxton race represents the clearest split between Senate Republican leadership, who view Cornyn as a stronger general election candidate, and the grassroots conservative base that sees Paxton as their champion against the establishment. Trump endorsed over 130 candidates for Texas legislature, Congress, and statewide office. But he stayed neutral in the Cornyn-Paxton race, for now. He's suggested he might get involved in the runoff, which means both candidates are going to spend the next 12 weeks trying to prove they're the most Trump loyal, while Trump decides whether to blow up the entire thing. Meanwhile, the Democratic nominee is James Tallarico, an Austin state representative who spent over $17 million on ads through his campaign, with a pro-Tallarico super PAC spending another $8 million. He had nearly a 5-to-1 spending advantage over Representative Jasmine Crockett. Again, the money worked. Shocking, I know. And here's where it gets even more absurd. State Senator Mays Middleton contributed close to $12 million of his own oil and gas fortune to his Attorney General campaign. He came in first place. Don Huffines loaned his comptroller campaign $10 million. When winning requires being a millionaire or having millionaire friends, we've stopped calling it democracy and started calling it viable candidacy. The language shift should concern you. Now, let's talk about North Carolina, because this is where Democrats think they can flip a Senate seat. Roy Cooper, the former two-term Democratic governor, won his primary and will face Michael Whatley, the Trump-backed former Republican National Committee chair. Cooper has never lost an election since the 80s. He leads Whatley by 10 points in head-to-head polling. 50% of North Carolina voters strongly disapprove of Trump's job performance. 60% believe their income is falling behind the cost of living. Three-quarters say inflation and rising costs make them feel stressed. One unaffiliated voter, Kelly Burke, told reporters, "The economic issues become very severe because we're dealing with a fixed income." That's the biggest thing to me. Second is the instability and vulnerability that we have in this divided political climate. The unpredictability of the current situation is untenable. That quote, untenable, that's the word that should worry Republicans. Not anger, not outrage, exhaustion. But here's what nobody's talking about. Democrats haven't won a Senate race in North Carolina since 2008. Cooper's strong at the state level. Federal races are different. And while he's up 10 points now, we're 8 months from November. Anything can happen, everything will happen. There's also a congressional race in North Carolina's 4th District that's headed to a recount. Incumbent Valerie Foushee leads challenger Nida Alam by 1,202 votes less than 1 percentage point. Outside groups spent more than $4 million on this primary. AIPAC-affiliated groups spent $600,000 supporting Foushee and highlighting Alam's opposition to military aid to Israel. Here's where it gets murky. Foushee vowed not to take AIPAC money directly this cycle, but she benefited from AIPAC-affiliated super PAC spending, so she kept her promise technically while still getting the support functionally. It's the kind of distinction that makes voters cynical about campaign finance reform, because it reveals how easily the system can be gamed by people who understand the loopholes. Alam, endorsed by Bernie Sanders, framed herself as the more progressive choice. The race is close enough that we won't know the winner until after a recount, but the spending gap tells you which candidate the money wanted to win. Over in Arkansas, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders backed primary challenges to Republican senators who opposed her Franklin County prison project. Both Sanders-backed challenges lost decisively. Senator Ron Caldwell defeated his Sanders-backed challenger with 72% of the vote. That's not a loss, that's a repudiation.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
Sanders wanted a 3,000-bed prison in Franklin County. Local voters expressed concerns about safety, potential escapes, and unwanted prison jobs. The senators who voted against it just won their primaries by landslides. Even governors have limits when they're asking communities to accept something they fundamentally don't want. On the Democratic side, Hallie Schaffner won her Senate primary. Her family's 2,000-acre soybean farm closed after 6 generations. She's gained national attention discussing how Trump's tariffs impacted her family. She's running against 2-term incumbent Tom Cotton, who has over $9.6 million in campaign funds and chairs the Senate Intelligence Committee. One Arkansas voter, a Marine veteran named Chris Haugen, said, "All of them are important, but especially right now is a time we should all be out voting. Democracy is under attack." Another voter mentioned concerns about ICE agents wearing masks during immigration operations, stuff we see in third world countries. The primaries happened the weekend after U.S. military strikes on Iran. Voters mentioned it. Candidates didn't really address it. That gap between what's happening and what's being discussed, that's where accountability goes to die. So what does all this mean? First, money is determinative in ways we need to stop pretending it isn't. The most expensive Senate primary in American history just showed us that $71 million can overcome polling, momentum, and grassroots enthusiasm. If you're not a millionaire or backed by millionaires, your path to office is nearly impossible. Democracy. Second, Trump's endorsement remains powerful, but not omnipotent. Most of his candidates won, but notable exceptions. Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller, losing re-election despite a Trump endorsement. Multiple congressional endorsees heading to runoffs suggest that local dynamics and candidate quality still matter. That should embolden more Republicans to maintain some independence. Whether it will is another question. Third, economic anxiety is real and bipartisan. Voters across party lines are talking about inflation, cost of living, fixed incomes, and uncertainty. The party that figures out how to address that concretely, not with rhetoric but with policy, has an advantage. Fourth, the Texas Republican Party is about to spend 12 weeks destroying itself before facing a well-funded Democratic opponent. That's not a prediction. That's just what runoffs do. And finally, notice what's missing from every single report. Voter turnout data. We have no idea if enthusiasm is up or down compared to previous elections. We have extensive coverage of how much money was spent, but almost no discussion of campaign finance reform. We know rural voters are anxious, but have limited reporting on the actual economic impacts of tariffs on agriculture and manufacturing. We know voters are concerned about healthcare, but there's no substantive coverage of what candidates are actually proposing. The architecture of political coverage has become a game of who won, who lost, with dollar figures as decoration. The investigative work, the why, the how, the what happens next gets left in the footnotes. So here's what to watch. Will Trump endorse in the Texas runoff? Can Cooper maintain his lead in North Carolina through November? Will the recount in the 4th District change anything? And most importantly, will any of these candidates figure out how to talk about economic anxiety in ways that don't sound like consultant-tested talking points?
Oh, hey, friend. Do you like what you're hearing? Now you can have a ridiculously amazing podcast, too. Check out holler.studio to get yourself one today.
The primaries are over. The real campaigns are just beginning. And democracy, as always, remains expensive, exhausting, and somehow still worth fighting for, even when the people with the most money keep winning. Thank you for listening to GREP News. If you are enjoying our podcast, please follow the show. Give us a 5-star rating to help us grow, and learn more at grep.news. Until next time.
GREP News. Thomas.